The Pentagon Memorial Garden stood silent under the weight of history and honor. Bronze plaques gleamed in the morning sun, commemorating battles won and lives sacrificed. A crowd of uniforms and suits gathered around a shrouded monument, their faces bearing the weathered lines of those who understood sacrifice. At the podium, Colonel William Steele Bill Harmon adjusted his tie, his 78-year-old hands still steady as they had been when they gripped tank controls decades ago. Bill gazed at the veiled statue. The shape beneath the cloth was unmistakable to him. The distinctive silhouette of the M1150 Assault Breacher Vehicle, a behemoth of American engineering that had changed modern warfare forever. His creation, his legacy. "Ladies and gentlemen," began the four-star general, introducing him, "today we honor not just a machine, but the men who brought it to life. This vehicle has saved thousands of American lives in combat zones across the world, but few know the true story behind its creation. Colonel William Harmon's vision 20 years ago fundamentally changed how we fight and how we protect our soldiers. His story reminds us that behind every technological advance are human hearts dedicated to protecting those who serve." The crowd applauded. Bill nodded solemnly, his mind drifting back 2 decades to when he wasn't Colonel Harmon, but Captain Bill, a 58-year-old tank commander refusing to accept retirement when there were still battles to be fought and lives to save. The sun beat down on Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland, with merciless intensity that summer of 2003. The air above the concrete rippled with heat as Captain William Harmon carried his cardboard box across the parking lot. 38 years of military service reduced to a collection of desk ornaments, photographs, and certificates that would soon be relegated to his garage or attic back home in Montana. Bill placed the box in the trunk of his Crown Victoria, pausing to stare at the testing grounds in the distance. Tanks and military vehicles sat like sleeping giants on the tarmac. He could identify each model from silhouette alone, recite the specifications of each vehicle from memory. This had been his world since he was 20 years old. A young lieutenant hurried across the parking lot. "Captain Harmon, sir, General Wallace needs to see you immediately." Bill raised an eyebrow. "I'm out as of today, son. Retirement papers are signed." "Sir, the general insists, says it's a matter of national security." 20 minutes later, Bill sat in General Wallace's office, surrounded by maps of Afghanistan and Iraq. The room smelled of coffee and air conditioning. On the wall hung photographs of the general with presidents and foreign dignitaries. "Thank you for coming, Bill. I know today is supposed to be your last day." General Wallace pushed a folder across the desk. The cover read "Classified" in bold red letters. "But I need your expertise one more time." Bill didn't open the folder. "With all due respect, sir, I've done my time. There are younger men with fresher ideas." "That's precisely the problem." Wallace leaned forward. "The younger men don't understand what you understand. They haven't seen what you've seen." "And what's that, sir?" "The cost of inadequate protection. Desert Storm, 1991. You lost men to mines and IEDs." Bill's jaw tightened. The memories rushed back with painful clarity. Staff Sergeant Thomas Miller, Private First Class James Wilson, Lieutenant Robert Parker. Good men turned to names on memorial walls because their vehicles couldn't withstand improvised explosives. "We're developing something new, Bill. A vehicle specifically designed to clear mines and explosives. Based on the M1 Abrams chassis, we're calling it the Assault Breacher Vehicle. The Marines are interested, but we're hitting roadblocks in development." Bill finally opened the folder. Inside were technical specifications and early design concepts for the M1150 ABV. Full-width mine plow, dual-line charges, lane marking system, remote control capability. "Why me?" Bill asked, though he already knew the answer. "Because you've commanded tanks in real combat situations. Because you understand both the technical and human elements. And because you care about the men inside these machines." Bill closed the folder. "I appreciate the offer, sir, but my retirement plans are set. My wife is expecting me home by the end of the month. We've waited long enough." The general reached for his computer, turned the screen toward Bill. "There's one more thing you should see." On the screen was a deployment roster. Bill scanned the names until one jumped out at him. Sergeant Robert Bobby Harmon, 75th Ranger Regiment, deploying to Afghanistan in 3 months. "My son," Bill's voice was barely audible. "He's a fine soldier, following in his father's footsteps, though he chose the infantry path instead of armor." Bill stared at his son's name. Bobby had joined the military against his wishes, determined to forge his own path rather than live in his father's shadow. Their last conversation had ended in an argument. Now Bobby would be walking through minefields in Afghanistan. "When do I start?" Bill asked, his retirement forgotten. The following morning, Bill stood before his new team in a secure conference room at Aberdeen. Maps and technical diagrams covered the walls. Coffee steamed from paper cups. The smell of mechanical grease and determination filled the air. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Captain William Harmon. Some of you know me, some don't. I've been asked to lead the development of the M1150 Assault Breacher Vehicle. This machine will save lives, American lives, by clearing mines and IEDs ahead of advancing troops. We have 6 months to make it combat ready." Bill surveyed the faces before him. 4 individuals who would become his core team, the Iron Pioneers, as they would later be known. John Wrench Walker sat nearest the door. At 62, the Master Sergeant was even older than Bill. His massive forearms were covered in engine grease, his fingers perpetually stained black. Walker had served with Bill in Desert Storm, maintaining the M1A1 Abrams tanks under impossible conditions. There was nothing he couldn't fix, no mechanical problem he couldn't solve. His eyes held the quiet confidence of a man who had faced hell and returned with knowledge. "Walker and I go back," Bill explained to the others. "When your tank breaks down in enemy territory, he's the man you want to see coming." "Still can't retire, huh, Captain?" Walker grinned, revealing a gold tooth. "Apparently not. You neither." Beside Walker sat Major Sarah Reynolds, 45. Her brown hair streaked with premature gray, pulled back in a severe bun. Her posture was West Point perfect. A materials and explosives expert with 3 combat tours under her belt, Reynolds had personally disarmed over 100 IEDs in Afghanistan. "Major Reynolds wrote the book on modern explosive detection and neutralization," Bill said. "Literally wrote the manual they use at the academy now." "The current manual is inadequate," Reynolds replied, her voice precise and clinical. "The enemy evolves their techniques weekly. We must anticipate, not merely respond." Next to her sat Captain Michael Chen, 35, MIT educated, with round glasses and quick, nervous hands that seemed to never stop moving. Chen had pioneered remote control systems for military vehicles, allowing operators to control massive machines from safe distances. "Captain Chen will develop our remote operation capability," Bill explained. "His work will allow us to place machines in danger instead of men. The current prototype has a range of 1 kilometer, Chen said. We need to extend that to 5 while maintaining reliable control in combat conditions." The final member of the team sat slightly apart from the others. Sergeant Robert Harmon, 28, Bill's son. Bobby had his mother's eyes and Bill's stubborn jaw. His Ranger tab was prominently displayed on his uniform. His expression remained neutral, professional, betraying no personal connection to the captain. "Sergeant Harmon joins us from the 75th Ranger Regiment," Bill said, maintaining the same professional tone. "He'll provide the infantry perspective to ensure our vehicle meets the needs of the men it's designed to protect." The unspoken tension between father and son filled the room. Everyone pretended not to notice. "Sir," Bobby said with a nod, his voice formal, "the Rangers appreciate being included in the development process." Bill studied the technical diagrams on the wall. "The M1150 ABV will be built on the M1 Abrams chassis. The turret will be removed and replaced with a new structure housing the line charges and control systems. We'll add a full-width mine plow capable of clearing a path through minefields while withstanding multiple detonations." Walker whistled. "That's asking a lot of the front suspension." "Indeed it is, which is why we'll need to completely redesign it. Major Reynolds, I'll need comprehensive data on current mine types being encountered in Afghanistan." "Already compiled, sir," Reynolds replied. "The Taliban are using primarily Soviet-era mines supplemented with homemade IEDs. The triggering mechanisms vary widely." "Captain Chen, I want remote operation capability that allows an operator to control the vehicle from a safe distance without sacrificing response time or control precision." Chen nodded. "We'll need to overcome signal jamming concerns and latency issues." "And Sergeant Harmon," Bill said, finally looking directly at his son, "I need realistic assessments of what infantry needs from a mine-clearing vehicle. Soldiers will be following this machine into battle. Their lives depend on its effectiveness." Bobby met his father's gaze. "Yes, sir, I'll ensure their perspective is represented." After the briefing, the team dispersed to begin their work. Bill remained in the conference room, studying the diagrams and specifications. He didn't notice Bobby lingering by the door until his son spoke. "You pulled strings to get me assigned to this project," Bobby said. It wasn't a question. Bill didn't look up from his papers. "You were the logical choice. You have combat experience, and you understand the infantry needs. I was scheduled to deploy with my unit. This project will save more lives than your deployment would. Bobby stepped further into the room. You've been trying to pull me out of combat roles since I enlisted. When will you accept that this is the path I chose? Bill finally looked up. When you chose the infantry over armor, I accepted it. When you joined the Rangers instead of a mechanized unit, I accepted it. But when I have the chance to use your expertise on a project that could save your life and the lives of men like you, I take it. That's not interference. That's being a commander and a father. The men I trained with are deploying without me, men who count on me. And they'll be safer when we finish this vehicle and deploy it alongside them. Bill softened his tone. 3 months on this project, that's all I'm asking. Then you can rejoin your unit before they deploy to Afghanistan. The tension in Bobby's shoulders eased slightly. 3 months. But don't expect me to call you Dad during working hours, Captain. Wouldn't dream of it, Sergeant. After Bobby left, Bill stared at the photo on the wall. An M1 Abrams tank in Desert Storm, its massive bulk silhouetted against the burning Kuwaiti oil fields. Bill had commanded that tank, had felt the power of American engineering beneath his hands, had trusted that machine with his life and the lives of his crew. Now he needed to create something new, something that would go before the tanks, before the infantry, clearing the path of hidden killers. The assault breacher vehicle would become a guardian angel in steel, protecting American soldiers from threats they couldn't see. Bill's contemplation was interrupted by a knock at the door. A stern-faced colonel entered without waiting for a response. Captain Harmon, Frank Thompson, DARPA Special Projects. Bill recognized the name immediately. Frank Thompson had been a lieutenant under his command during Desert Storm. A brilliant but headstrong officer who had gone on to rise through the ranks faster than Bill ever had. Colonel Thompson, this is unexpected. Thompson remained standing, his posture rigid. I've been overseeing a parallel development project, the XM12 remote mine clearing system. Bill frowned. I wasn't aware of any parallel projects. Compartmentalization, need-to-know basis. Thompson placed a thumb drive on the table. The XM12 uses autonomous drones and remote-controlled vehicles to clear minefields without placing any human operators at risk. Completely unmanned systems. And you're telling me this because the Pentagon won't fund both projects indefinitely. Eventually, one approach will win out. The future is removing humans from the battlefield entirely, Harmon, not building bigger, more expensive machines for them to ride into danger. Bill stood, drawing himself to his full height. Machines don't make battlefield decisions, Colonel. They don't adapt to unexpected situations. They don't make moral judgments. Exactly, they execute their programming without fear, without hesitation, and without risking American lives. Thompson stepped closer. Your approach is outdated, Harmon, just like you. My approach is built on 40 years of combat experience. What's yours built on? Algorithms and theories? Thompson smiled thinly. Progress. The Pentagon has authorized both projects to proceed to the prototype stage. May the best system win. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and congratulations on delaying your son's deployment. Very convenient timing. After Thompson left, Bill inserted the thumb drive into his computer. The screen filled with technical specifications for the XM12 system. Small remote-controlled vehicles equipped with ground-penetrating radar and robotic arms for disarming explosives. Aerial drones providing surveillance and mapping, all controlled from a safe distance by operators in protected command centers. On paper, it looked impressive, but Bill had seen combat, had felt the earth shake beneath his tank treads, had made split-second decisions that no algorithm could anticipate, had watched brave men die when technology failed. Bill closed the files and called General Wallace. Sir, why wasn't I informed about Thompson's project? Wallace sighed audibly over the phone. Politics, Bill. DARPA has powerful backers in Washington. They're pushing for fully autonomous systems across all military applications. These systems won't work in actual combat conditions. Then prove it. Build something better, something that combines the best of both worlds. That evening, Bill sat alone in his temporary quarters, a sparse room with military precision in its arrangements. A single photograph stood on the nightstand. His wife, Margaret, smiling from their front porch in Montana, the home he should be returning to now. The retirement they had planned for decades. One last mission, Maggie, he said to the photograph. One last chance to make a difference. He called home, explained the situation. Margaret understood, as she always had through his long military career. When he mentioned that Bobby was part of the project, she went quiet for a moment. "Bring him home safe, Bill. Both of you come home safe." "I promise," he replied, though they both knew such promises in military life were aspirational at best. The next morning, Bill gathered his team at the vehicle testing grounds. Before them stood an M1 Abrams tank, its massive bulk a testament to American military might. Beside it was a stripped-down chassis, the beginning of what would become the M1150 ABV. "This is our starting point," Bill explained. "The M1 Abrams is the finest tank ever built. 1,500 horsepower gas turbine engine, composite armor with depleted uranium mesh, top speed of 45 miles per hour despite weighing over 60 tons. Walker ran his hand along the tank's side with something approaching reverence. "Beautiful machine. We're going to transform this chassis into something new," Bill continued. "A vehicle that can move ahead of our forces, clearing paths through the deadliest terrain on Earth. It will need to survive mine detonations that would destroy any normal vehicle. It will need to clear paths wide enough for tanks and other vehicles to follow." Chen examined the chassis with a critical eye. "The remote control systems will need to be integrated from the ground up. Retrofitting rarely works well. We'll need to completely redesign the front end to accommodate the mine plow," Walker added, "and strengthen the suspension to handle repeated explosions." Reynolds was already making calculations on her tablet. "The line charge deployment system will require significant modifications to the turret ring structure." Bobby walked the perimeter of the vehicles, measuring distances with his eyes. "The cleared path needs to be at least 4 meters wide for most military vehicles to follow safely, and we need clear visual markers that can be seen through dust and smoke." Bill nodded at each observation. "Exactly. We have 6 months to solve these problems and build a working prototype. The deadline is non-negotiable." The team began work immediately, each focusing on their area of expertise. Days turned into weeks. The chassis gradually transformed. The iconic tank turret was removed, replaced with a specialized structure designed to house the line charges and control systems. The front end was reinforced and fitted with the massive mine plow capable of withstanding multiple explosions while clearing a path wide enough for following vehicles. Progress was steady, but challenges arose daily. The mine plow placed enormous stress on the front suspension. The remote control system suffered from signal degradation at longer ranges. The line charges needed precise deployment mechanisms that wouldn't jam under battlefield conditions. Through it all, Bill pushed his team relentlessly, drawing on his decades of experience to solve problems and overcome obstacles. He worked alongside them, his hands dirty with grease and grime, refusing to be merely an administrator. Walker and Bill often worked late into the night, discussing mechanical problems over coffee that grew progressively stronger as the hours passed. "The front suspension is still collapsing after the third mine detonation," Walker said one night, staring at the test results. "We need something stronger than anything currently in production." Bill studied the damaged components. "What if we distributed the force, multiple smaller shock absorbers rather than 2 large ones?" "Might work. We'd need to custom machine them." "Then that's what we'll do." Reynolds approached her work with clinical precision, testing explosives and armor configurations in controlled environments. "The Taliban are using a mix of Soviet-era mines and homemade IEDs," she explained during one briefing. "The Soviet mines are predictable, the IEDs are not. We need to prepare for both." Chen worked obsessively on the remote control systems, often forgetting to eat or sleep until someone reminded him. "I'm pushing the range to 7 kilometers, he told Bill during a progress update. "But maintaining precise control becomes exponentially more difficult with distance. The operator needs tactile feedback, needs to feel the machine responding." Bobby provided the infantry perspective, insisting on features that would directly benefit the soldiers following behind the vehicle. "The lane marking system needs to be foolproof," he argued during a design review. "Soldiers will be following this path in low visibility conditions, under fire, with limited time to make decisions." Throughout the development, Bill maintained a professional relationship with his son during working hours, but occasionally they would share a meal in the evening, cautiously rebuilding their relationship. "Why didn't you ever want me to follow you into the tank corps?" Bobby asked during one such dinner. Bill considered the question carefully before answering. "Tanks are magnificent machines, powerful, protected, but they were also targets. Everyone on the battlefield wants to kill the tank first. The biggest threat gets the most attention. And you wanted me to be safer than that? I wanted you to make your own choice, But yes, I hoped you might choose something with better odds. Bobby smiled slightly. So I chose the Rangers instead, even worse odds. You always were stubborn. Wonder where I got that from. As the prototype neared completion, Bill received a message to attend a classified briefing at Pentagon headquarters. He found himself in a secure room with General Wallace, Colonel Thompson, and several high-ranking intelligence officers. Gentlemen, what I'm about to share is top secret, began the intelligence briefing officer. We have confirmed reports that a hostile nation has successfully stolen key elements of our autonomous military vehicle technology, specifically the command and control protocols for remotely operated vehicles. Thompson paled visibly. That's impossible. The XM-12 systems are completely isolated from external networks. Nevertheless, it happened, the intelligence officer continued. We believe they now have the capability to intercept and potentially override command signals to autonomous vehicles. Bill leaned forward. What exactly does this mean for our projects? General Wallace answered. It means that fully autonomous systems may be vulnerable to enemy takeover. A drone or unmanned vehicle could potentially be turned against our own forces. Bill looked directly at Thompson. Human operators inside vehicles can't be hacked. The intelligence officer nodded. Which is why your project has taken on new significance, Captain Harmon. We need systems that can be operated remotely when conditions permit, but also directly when necessary. The M1150 ABV is designed with both capabilities, Bill confirmed. Remote operation for maximum safety, but with a protected crew compartment for direct control when needed. This changes nothing, Thompson insisted. We can improve encryption, create better security protocols. Those measures would take years to develop and test, Wallace said. We need solutions now. The M1150 project will proceed as priority. The XM-12 project will continue, but with a reduced scope. Thompson stared at Bill with barely concealed hostility. This isn't over, Harmon. After the meeting, Bill returned to Aberdeen with renewed determination. The stakes had been raised. His project wasn't just competing with Thompson's approach. It was now a vital national security priority. The team worked with increased intensity, knowing their design now had Pentagon priority. The prototype took shape, a massive steel beast combining the best elements of tank design with specialized mine-clearing capabilities. One evening, Bill found Bobby sitting alone in the workshop, staring at a tablet screen. Something wrong, Sergeant? Bill asked, maintaining their professional relationship in the workplace. Bobby hesitated, then handed him the tablet. On the screen was Bobby's medical file. A genetic test result was highlighted. I went in for routine tests last week, Bobby said quietly. They found something. Bill read the results, a cold fear gripping his heart. The test indicated a rare genetic disorder, the same one that had killed his own father decades ago. A condition that caused progressive muscle weakness and eventually heart failure. How advanced is it? Bill asked, struggling to keep his voice steady. Early stages, the doctor says I might have years before serious symptoms develop, or it could accelerate unexpectedly. Bobby took back the tablet. They're going to recommend a medical discharge. Bill sat down heavily. Does your mother know? Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. The professional facade between them crumbled. Bill placed a hand on his son's shoulder. We'll fight this. The best doctors, the best treatments. That's not why I'm telling you this, Bobby said. I'm telling you because I need to stay with my unit. I need to deploy with them. I need whatever time I have left to matter. Bobby, with this condition, I know the risks, but this is my choice, my life. Bill wanted to argue, to order his son to accept the medical discharge, to go home and focus on treatment. But he recognized the determination in Bobby's eyes, the same determination that had driven Bill throughout his own career. I'll need to inform General Wallace, Bill said finally. This affects the project. I understand, but I still want to contribute while I'm here. The ABV still needs to be ready before my unit deploys. Bill nodded, his mind racing with implications. His son's condition, the project timeline, the competition with Thompson's approach, the deployment schedule for troops in Afghanistan. We'll finish it, Bill promised, and it will be the finest vehicle ever created for protecting our soldiers. The next morning, Bill called a meeting with his core team, excluding Bobby. He explained the situation in strict confidence. Sergeant Harmon has a medical condition that will likely result in his discharge. However, he has requested to complete this project and potentially deploy with his unit. I've agreed to support his decision. Captain, Reynolds began cautiously, are you certain that's wise, both professionally and personally? No, Bill admitted. I'm not certain at all, but I respect his right to choose. Then we need to accelerate our timeline, Owen Walker said. Get this vehicle finished and deployed before his unit ships out. Exactly. From this moment, we work around the clock if necessary. The M1150 ABV will be ready for final testing within 30 days. The team redoubled their efforts. Sleep became a luxury. Meals were consumed at workstations. Every component was refined, tested, and improved. The massive vehicle took its final form, a steel behemoth designed with a single purpose: to protect American soldiers from the invisible killers beneath the earth. As the completion date approached, Bill received word that Colonel Thompson had requested a comparative demonstration. Both the M1150 ABV and Thompson's XM12 system would be evaluated side by side at White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico. This is highly irregular, Bill protested to General Wallace over a secure line. The M1150 is nearly ready for deployment. This will only cause delays. Politics, Bill, Wallace replied wearily. Thompson has supporters in Washington who insist on a direct comparison before full funding is allocated. Just get your machine ready. Let it speak for itself. The team prepared the M1150 for transport to White Sands. The massive vehicle was loaded onto a specialized trailer, its bulk impressive even in transit. Bill watched the loading process with pride. Despite the circumstances, despite the personal challenges, they had created something remarkable. The night before departure, Bill found Bobby examining the vehicle one last time. "Checking my work, Sergeant?" Bill asked. Bobby smiled faintly. "Just saying goodbye to her. Tomorrow she faces her trial by fire. She'll pass with flying colors." "I know she will." Bobby ran his hand along the armored hull. "The men who follow behind this machine will come home alive because of what we built here." "What happens after the demonstration?" Bill asked. "Have you decided?" "I'm going to deploy with my unit if they'll let me. Medical discharge or not." Bill nodded, accepting his son's decision. "Then we'd better make sure this vehicle is there to clear the way for you." The next morning, the team departed for White Sands. The New Mexico desert stretched before them, a perfect testing ground for the machines that would soon face the harsh landscapes of Afghanistan. The M1150 ABV would face its greatest challenge yet, not just against the mines and explosives it was designed to clear, but against a competing vision of warfare where humans were removed from the equation entirely. As they approached the testing grounds, Bill thought about the journey that had brought him here. From young tank commander to veteran captain, from father to project leader, from retirement to one final mission. The M1150 wasn't just a vehicle. It represented his lifelong commitment to protecting the men and women who served. It embodied his belief that technology should serve humanity, not replace it. And now, as the massive vehicle rolled toward its moment of truth, Bill steeled himself for the battle ahead. Not just for the success of his project, but for the future of his son and all the sons and daughters who would follow the path cleared by the steel guardian he had created. The White Sands testing facility loomed ahead, a collection of buildings and observation towers rising from the desert floor. Waiting for them was Colonel Thompson and his team, alongside their array of drones and remote-controlled vehicles. The XM12 system looked small and fragile compared to the massive bulk of the M1150 ABV. Bill met Thompson's gaze across the distance, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. Two old soldiers with different visions of the future. Two approaches to protecting American lives. Only one would prevail. The final test was about to begin. The New Mexico sun cast harsh shadows across White Sands Missile Range. The testing ground transformed into a battlefield of ideas. Captain William Harmon stood beside the massive M1150 Assault Breacher Vehicle, its steel hulk gleaming in the morning light. Across the field, Colonel Frank Thompson supervised final preparations on his XM12 remote mine clearing system, an array of sleek drones and compact robotic vehicles. Military observers gathered on a protected observation platform. General Wallace stood among them, his face impassive, revealing nothing of his thoughts on the upcoming demonstration. Representatives from the Pentagon, Congress, and defense contractors filled the remaining seats, their presence a reminder of the political and financial stakes involved. Bill addressed his team one final time before the demonstration began. "This isn't just about our project versus theirs. This is about proving a fundamental truth about warfare. Technology serves the warrior, not replaces him. Remember that today." Walker nodded, his weathered hands completing a final check of the ABV's mechanical systems. Reynolds verified the explosive line charges with methodical precision. Chen calibrated the remote control systems, his fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. Bobby stood slightly apart, his eyes on the mock minefield ahead, visualizing the infantry who would follow this vehicle in real combat. A colonel from the testing range approached with clipboards. "Gentlemen, we're ready to begin. The course has been prepared according to specifications. Live explosives are in place, simulating current threat environments in Afghanistan. You'll clear identical paths through separate sections of the course, evaluated on speed, thoroughness, and adaptability." Thompson stepped forward, confidence evident in his posture. "The XM-12 system will demonstrate the future of warfare. No risk to human operators, no American lives endangered." "The M1150 will demonstrate the reality of warfare," Bill countered. "Adaptable, robust, and with human judgment where it matters most." The testing official nodded. "Colonel Thompson's system will proceed first." Thompson's team took positions at their control station, a sophisticated array of screens and control interfaces housed in an armored trailer at a safe distance. The XM-12 system activated. Small aerial drones launched first, rising into the clear sky to survey the terrain ahead. Ground-penetrating radar mapped subsurface threats. Data flowed to the operators, who then dispatched small robotic vehicles to neutralize each detected mine. The system worked with impressive precision. Each drone movement carefully calculated, each robotic arm delicately disarming explosive devices. The observers nodded appreciatively at the technological display. Thompson stood beside the control station, his expression growing more confident with each successful neutralization. Bill watched with professional interest, noting both the capabilities and limitations of Thompson's approach. The system handled standard mine types efficiently, but seemed to slow when confronting unexpected configurations. The data processing created noticeable delays between detection and neutralization. After 90 minutes, Thompson's system had cleared a path through the designated section of the course. No human had come within half a kilometer of danger. The path was narrow but thoroughly cleared. Thompson faced the observers with barely concealed triumph. "The XM-12 system demonstrates perfect execution without risking a single American life," he announced. "This is warfare for the modern age, precise, remote, safe." General Wallace turned to Bill. "Captain Harmon, your team is up." Bill nodded to his crew. "Walker, you're on mechanical systems. Reynolds, monitor the explosive systems. Chen, prepare remote operation mode. Sergeant Harmon, you'll evaluate the infantry perspective from the observation post." Bobby frowned. "Sir, request permission to remain with the vehicle." "Denied, Sergeant. Observation post. That's an order." The team took their positions. Bill settled into the commander's position inside the ABV, the familiar feel of a tank control station bringing back decades of muscle memory. The massive vehicle rumbled to life, its modified turbine engine generating a distinctive roar that echoed across the desert. "Beginning approach in remote operation mode," Bill announced over the radio. Chen activated the remote systems from a control station near the observers. The ABV began moving forward under remote command, its bulk surprisingly graceful as it approached the minefield. The full-width mine plow lowered into position, a massive steel barrier designed to trigger and deflect explosive devices. The ABV entered the minefield. The first mine detonated against the plow, a sharp crack followed by a plume of sand and smoke. The vehicle continued forward without hesitation, triggering 2 more explosions in quick succession. The observers leaned forward, impressed by the vehicle's resilience. "Switching to line charge deployment," Bill announced. A rocket launched from the ABV carrying a line of explosives that extended nearly 100 meters ahead of the vehicle. When detonated, this charge would clear a wide path through the densest section of the minefield. The rocket soared precisely as designed, laying the line charge in a perfect straight line. Firing line charge. The controlled detonation rippled across the desert floor, triggering sympathetic explosions from buried mines. A cloud of dust and debris billowed upward. As it settled, a cleared path became visible, significantly wider than the one created by Thompson's system. "Deploying lane markers," Bill continued. The ABV automatically dispensed marker poles along the edges of the cleared path, visible guides for vehicles and troops that would follow. The system worked flawlessly, creating an unmistakable safe corridor through the minefield. The demonstration proceeded smoothly until the ABV reached the final section of the course. Here, the testing range had prepared a surprise. A deep ravine concealed by camouflage netting, simulating the challenging terrain of Afghanistan's mountain regions. The remote sensors detected the obstacle too late. The ABV lurched forward, its front end dipping precariously toward the ravine. Chen fought with the remote controls, attempting to reverse course, but the limited visual information made precise control impossible. Switching to manual operation, Bill announced calmly. He disengaged the remote system and took direct control of the vehicle. With practiced skill, he manipulated the controls, halting the forward momentum just at the edge of the ravine. The observers held their breath as the massive vehicle balanced precariously. Bill carefully reversed the ABV, then navigated around the obstacle, identifying a narrower section of the ravine that could be crossed. He deployed the mine plow at a specific angle, effectively creating a bridge over the gap, then proceeded across with deliberate precision. Once past the obstacle, Bill redeployed the lane markers and completed the course. The entire demonstration had taken just 45 minutes, half the time of Thompson's system, and had cleared a wider, more accessible path. As the ABV returned to the starting position, applause broke out among many of the observers. Bill emerged from the vehicle, his uniform damp with sweat, but his expression professionally neutral. General Wallace approached both team leaders. Impressive demonstrations, gentlemen. The evaluation committee will review the data and performance metrics. We'll have a preliminary decision within 24 hours. Thompson cornered Bill as the teams began packing their equipment. That ravine was a cheap trick. The course was supposed to be standardized. The battlefield rarely cooperates with our expectations, Colonel, Bill replied. That's why human operators matter. They adapt. Your approach is outdated, costly, dangerous. My approach works in real-world conditions. That's all that matters. Thompson stepped closer, lowering his voice. This isn't over, Harmon. I've invested too much in the XM12 system to let an old tank jockey derail the future of warfare. Before Bill could respond, Bobby approached. Captain, we have a situation with the hydraulic system. Possible sabotage. Bill followed his son to the ABV where Walker was examining the hydraulic lines controlling the mine plow. Clear evidence of tampering was visible. A key connection had been partially severed, allowing fluid to leak slowly during operation. Would have failed completely in another few minutes, Walker explained, pointing to the damaged component. Someone knew exactly where to cut and how to make it look like mechanical failure. Bill examined the damage. When could this have happened? Must have been last night or early this morning. The vehicle was unattended for approximately 40 minutes during the setup briefing. Bill glanced toward Thompson's team, now busily packing their equipment across the field. Document everything, take photographs, we'll file a formal complaint, but keep this quiet for now. That evening, the teams returned to temporary barracks at White Sands. Bill called a private meeting with his core team in the small conference room adjacent to their quarters. The sabotage was professional work, he began once the room was secure, targeted to cause a critical failure during the most demanding part of the demonstration. Thompson, Walker said flatly, has to be. We can't prove that, Reynolds cautioned, and making accusations without proof will only undermine our credibility. Chen nodded in agreement. We should focus on the evaluation results. The ABV performed exceptionally well despite the attempted sabotage. Bobby remained silent, his expression troubled. Bill noticed his son's unusual reticence. Sergeant Harmon, your thoughts? Bobby hesitated before speaking. During the setup this morning, I saw Lieutenant Carmichael from Thompson's team near our vehicle. Said he was admiring the engineering. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Carmichael served under Thompson in Iraq, Bill noted. Loyal to a fault. So we have a suspect but no proof, Reynolds summarized. And making accusations against another officer is serious business. We secure the vehicle round the clock from now on, Bill decided, and we proceed as if nothing has happened. The ABV's performance speaks for itself. After the meeting adjourned, Bill found Bobby waiting outside his quarters. You should have told me about Carmichael immediately, Bill said quietly. I know, sir. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Bill studied his son's face. There's something else bothering you. Bobby looked down the empty hallway before responding. I received a message from Thompson yesterday. He knows about my medical condition, implied that my involvement compromises the project. Bill felt cold anger rising. How did he get that information? My medical files were accessed 3 days ago. Authorized Pentagon review, allegedly. Thompson is fishing for any advantage. Bill placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Your condition has no bearing on this project or your contribution to it. What if he goes public? Claims the ABV project is being influenced by your personal concerns about my deployment. Bill had considered this possibility. Thompson was desperate enough to use any leverage available. Let him try. Your diagnosis is private medical information. If he discloses it, he's violated about a dozen regulations. Bobby nodded, not entirely convinced. I should have been more careful. This isn't your fault. Get some rest. Tomorrow we find out if the evaluation committee saw the same demonstration we did. The following morning, General Wallace summoned both team leaders to his temporary office at White Sands. Bill and Thompson sat opposite each other, the tension between them palpable. "Gentlemen, the preliminary evaluation results are in," Wallace began, sliding folders across the desk. Both systems demonstrated significant capabilities and certain limitations. Bill opened the folder, scanning the technical assessment. The XM-12 system showed excellent precision in detecting and neutralizing standard mine threats. However, its operational tempo was considered too slow for combat conditions, and its adaptability to unexpected terrain features was limited. Thompson shifted uncomfortably, but remained silent. The M1150 ABV demonstrated superior speed and created a more accessible path for following forces. The combination of remote and manual operation proved particularly effective when confronting unexpected obstacles. However, concerns were raised about the cost per unit and the continued risk to operators during manual operation phases. Wallace leaned back in his chair. The committee recommends proceeding with both projects with significant modifications. Colonel Thompson's XM-12 drones will be integrated with Captain Harmon's ABV platform, creating a hybrid system that utilizes the strengths of both approaches. Both men began to protest simultaneously. "General, the autonomous system cannot be effectively integrated with a manned vehicle," Thompson argued. "The ABV is designed as a complete system. Adding Thompson's drones compromises the unified control concept," Bill countered. Wallace raised a hand for silence. "This isn't a request, gentlemen. It's a directive from the Pentagon. Budget realities and operational needs require a consolidated approach. You will combine your teams and produce an integrated prototype within 60 days. After the meeting, Bill stood in the bright New Mexico sun, absorbing the implications of this new direction. The ABV project wasn't being canceled, but it was being fundamentally altered. Incorporating Thompson's autonomous systems would complicate the design and potentially compromise the operational simplicity that made the ABV effective. Walker joined him outside. "So we're getting married to Thompson's toy robots. That'll be fun. We adapt and overcome, Master Sergeant. That's what we do." "Thompson won't make this easy." "No, he won't." Bill watched Thompson's team loading their equipment for transport back to Aberdeen. "But we have something he doesn't." "What's that?" "Experience with failure. We know what doesn't work in real combat. His theoretical approach has never faced the real test." The combined teams returned to Aberdeen Proving Ground to begin the integration process. As expected, the merger was contentious from the start. Thompson insisted on maintaining separate development facilities, separate testing protocols, and separate reporting structures. The only integration occurred during formal review sessions where progress was evaluated against the Pentagon's requirements. 3 weeks into the combined project, Bill received an urgent summons to General Wallace's office. He found Wallace looking grim, a classified file open on his desk. "We have a problem, Bill, a serious one." Bill sat, instantly alert to the general's tone. "What's happened?" "Someone leaked information about the ABV project to the press, specifically allegations that you manipulated personnel assignments to protect your son from deployment, and that your judgment is compromised by his medical condition." Bill felt a surge of anger, but kept his expression neutral. "Thompson, we can't prove that." Wallace closed the file. "But the damage is done. The Washington Post is running the story tomorrow. Congressional oversight is already asking questions." "General, my son's assignment to this project was based on his qualifications. His Ranger experience provides essential infantry perspective." "I know that, Bill, but perception matters in Washington." Wallace sighed heavily. "There will be an official inquiry. In the meantime, Sergeant Harmon will be reassigned to administrative duties outside the project." "Sir, removing him now only lends credibility to the allegations." "Those are my orders, Captain. They come from above my pay grade." After leaving Wallace's office, Bill found Bobby in the workshop, already packing his personal items into a small box. "You heard," Bill said. Bobby nodded, his movements precise and controlled. "General Wallace's aide delivered the transfer orders 30 minutes ago. I report to Fort Meade tomorrow morning." "This is temporary. Once the inquiry clears us..." "It doesn't matter, Dad." Bobby rarely used the personal address during working hours. "My unit deploys in 5 weeks. I've already requested reinstatement. Medical review is scheduled for next week." Bill stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Bobby, with your condition..." "I know the risks. I've accepted them." Bobby closed the box. "The real question is what happens to the ABV project now. Thompson will use this to push for more autonomy, less human control. I won't let that happen. Then you need to focus on the project, not on me. Bobby extended his hand formally. It's been an honor serving under your command, Captain. Bill shook his son's hand, maintaining professional composure despite the turmoil of emotions beneath the surface. The honor was mine, Sergeant. Your contributions to this project will save many lives. After Bobby departed, Bill gathered his remaining team members. Walker, Reynolds, and Chen listened solemnly as he explained the situation. Sergeant Harmon has been reassigned pending an inquiry into personnel assignments on this project. We will continue our work with the same commitment to excellence that has characterized this team from the beginning. This is bull, Captain, Walker said bluntly. Everyone knows the kid earned his place here. Politics, Master Sergeant. We focus on what we can control. Bill turned to the technical diagrams on the wall. Now, where do we stand on integrating the autonomous detection systems with our control architecture? Chen hesitated before answering. Thompson's team is withholding key interface specifications. They claim proprietary technology concerns, but it's clearly deliberate obstruction. Major Reynolds? Similar issues with the explosives handling protocols. Their robotic systems aren't designed to deploy line charges of the size and power we require. They're suggesting scaling back our clearing capability to accommodate their limitations. Bill considered this information. Thompson was using the inquiry and Bobby's reassignment as cover to fundamentally alter the ABV concept, pushing it toward his autonomous vision. We proceed as planned, Bill decided. Document every instance of non-cooperation. Continued development of our core systems. I'll handle Thompson. Bill found Thompson in the Autonomous Systems Lab, surrounded by his team of young engineers. The contrast between Thompson's team and Bill's was striking. Thompson favored recent graduates with advanced degrees but minimal field experience. Bill's team consisted of veteran operators with decades of practical knowledge. We need to talk, Frank, privately. Thompson smiled thinly. Captain Harmon, I heard about your son's reassignment. Most unfortunate. The two men stepped into a small conference room adjacent to the lab. Bill closed the door firmly. You leaked classified medical information to the press. That's a criminal offense. Thompson's expression remained neutral. That's a serious accusation, Harmon. Do you have evidence? We both know what you did. The question is why. The committee already decided on a merged approach. You won that battle. Did I? Your design still dominates the project. Your philosophy of human operators still prevails. Thompson leaned forward. The future of warfare is autonomous, Harmon. Humans are the weakness in the system. They tire, they fear, they make mistakes. They also adapt, they improvise, they make judgment calls no algorithm can duplicate. An outdated perspective, just like you. Thompson stood. The inquiry will recommend removing you from the project. Your retirement paperwork is probably still valid. I suggest you use it. After Thompson left, Bill remained in the conference room processing this confrontation. Thompson wasn't just fighting for his project. He was fighting for a fundamental shift in warfare philosophy. A world where human soldiers were removed from danger entirely, replaced by machines that couldn't fear, couldn't disobey, and couldn't make moral judgments. Bill returned to his team with renewed determination. Thompson is actively sabotaging the integration. We need to document everything and prepare alternative approaches. For the next week, Bill's team meticulously recorded every instance of obstruction from Thompson's group. Interface specifications withheld. Testing dates delayed. Resources reallocated without consultation. The pattern was clear and deliberate. Meanwhile, the inquiry into personnel assignments proceeded. Bill provided detailed documentation of Bobby's qualifications and the specific infantry perspective he brought to the project. Former commanding officers testified to Bobby's exceptional performance as a ranger. Medical experts confirmed that his condition had not affected his work on the AB project. Despite these efforts, the inquiry dragged on, clearly influenced by political considerations beyond the factual merits of the case. Each day of delay pushed the project further behind schedule and strengthened Thompson's position. 10 days after Bobby's reassignment, Bill received an unexpected visitor at the ABV development facility. Lieutenant General Maxwell, chairman of the Joint Chiefs Technology Advisory Board, arrived unannounced with a small entourage of senior officers. Captain Harmon, I've been hearing concerning reports about this project's progress. Show me where things stand, no rehearsed presentations. I want to see the actual work. Bill led the general through the facility, explaining each component of the ABV system, and the challenges of integrating Thompson's autonomous elements. He was direct about the obstacles, professional in his assessment, and focused on operational requirements rather than personal conflicts. General Maxwell listened carefully, occasionally asking precise technical questions that revealed his deep understanding of combat engineering challenges. After 2 hours, he addressed both Bill and Thompson in the main conference room. Gentlemen, I've seen enough. This project is too important to be derailed by personality conflicts or philosophical disagreements. The inquiry into personnel assignments is hereby concluded with no finding of impropriety. Captain Harmon will continue as lead on the ABV development with full authority to determine system architecture. Thompson began to protest, but Maxwell cut him off. Colonel Thompson, your autonomous detection systems will be incorporated as a supplementary capability, not as the primary control architecture. The ABV will maintain direct human operation capability with remote operation as an option when conditions permit. After Maxwell departed, Thompson confronted Bill in the parking lot. You went over my head, called in favors with the old guard. I did nothing of the sort. Maxwell came on his own initiative. This isn't over, Harmon. The future belongs to autonomous systems. You're just delaying the inevitable. Bill watched Thompson storm away, recognizing the dangerous combination of wounded pride and unwavering conviction. Thompson truly believed in his vision of warfare without human operators. He would not abandon that vision easily. The next morning, Bill was reviewing the latest test results when Walker burst into his office. Captain, we've got trouble. Big trouble. Bill followed Walker to the vehicle bay where the ABV prototype sat in partial disassembly. Components were scattered across workbenches. Diagnostic equipment blinked with error messages. Reynolds and Chen stood examining a central control module, their expressions grave. Someone accessed the facility last night, Chen explained. They modified the core control systems and installed a backdoor in the software. Bill examined the compromised equipment. Can we fix it? Yes, but it will take time. We need to replace the affected components and rewrite portions of the control software. How long? Reynolds and Chen exchanged glances. 2 weeks minimum, maybe 3. Bill considered the implications. The project was already behind schedule due to the integration challenges and the inquiry. This sabotage would push them past the deployment date for Bobby's unit. The first ABVs would not be ready in time to protect those Rangers in Afghanistan. Do we have evidence of who did this? Walker pointed to the security camera above the main entrance. Camera was disabled. Professional job. But there's this. He handed Bill a small insignia pin, the kind worn on dress uniforms. It bore the distinctive emblem of DARPA's Special Projects Division, Thompson's division. Could have been planted to frame Thompson, Reynolds suggested. We shouldn't jump to conclusions. Agreed. Bill pocketed the pin. We focus on recovery, round-the-clock work. I'll arrange for security personnel to monitor the facility at all times. The team worked tirelessly to repair the damage. Components were replaced. Software was rewritten and verified. Security protocols were strengthened. Through it all, Bill maintained professional communication with Thompson's team, revealing nothing about the sabotage or their suspicions. Better to keep potential enemies close and under observation. 2 weeks later, the ABV system was fully restored and improved. The integration with Thompson's autonomous detection systems proceeded, though with careful isolation to prevent future compromises. The project was back on track, though still behind the original schedule. Bill was reviewing the latest progress reports when General Wallace arrived at the facility. The general's expression conveyed the seriousness of his visit before he spoke. Captain Harmon, there's been a development. Sergeant Harmon's unit has received deployment orders. They ship out to Afghanistan in 7 days. Bill had been expecting this news, but hearing it officially still hit hard. What about his medical review? Completed yesterday. They've cleared him for deployment with quarterly monitoring requirements. Wallace hesitated. There's more. The first ABV prototypes have been approved for field testing in theater. 2 units will deploy with the next rotation, scheduled to arrive approximately 3 weeks after Sergeant Harmon's unit. The implications were clear. Bobby would be in Afghanistan for 3 weeks before the ABVs arrived. 3 weeks of patrolling through minefields and IED zones without the protection the machines were designed to provide. Can we accelerate the ABV deployment? Bill asked, already knowing the answer. Impossible. The training protocols for operators haven't been completed. We can't send the vehicles without properly trained crews. Bill nodded, accepting this reality. Then we make absolutely certain those 2 units are ready and fully functional when they do deploy. After Wallace left, Bill called Bobby. Their conversation was brief and professional, focused on practical matters rather than emotions. Bobby would ship out with his Ranger unit as scheduled. The ABVs would arrive 3 weeks later. In the interim, his unit would conduct limited patrols using existing mine-clearing techniques. That evening, Bill sat alone in his temporary quarters, studying maps of Afghanistan and intelligence reports on Taliban mining techniques. The patterns were clear and concerning. The deployment area for Bobby's unit was heavily seeded with improvised explosive devices, many using sophisticated trigger mechanisms that could defeat conventional detection methods. The ABVs would make a critical difference when they arrived. But for those first 3 weeks, the Rangers would face extreme risk with inadequate protection. The thought of Bobby walking those deadly paths without the shield Bill had worked so hard to create was nearly unbearable. A knock at the door interrupted these dark thoughts. Bill opened it to find Walker standing outside, a determined expression on his weathered face. "Permission to speak freely, Captain?" "Always, Master Sergeant." Walker entered and closed the door. "We can have one ABV ready in 3 days. Not both, but one. It won't have all the bells and whistles, but the core functions will work." Bill straightened. "The deployment schedule is fixed. Schedules change when someone with enough authority makes it happen." Walker held Bill's gaze. "Your son's unit ships out in 7 days. One functional ABV could ship with them if someone with stars on their shoulders signs the right papers." General Wallace was clear about the training requirements. And if someone volunteered to deploy with the vehicle, someone already intimately familiar with its operation, the implication hung in the air between them. Bill understood exactly what Walker was suggesting. That would require pulling a captain from retirement status to active deployment. Numerous regulations would need to be waived. Regulations get waived in wartime when necessary. Walker headed for the door. "Just something to consider, sir. The team and I will have that vehicle ready regardless. Your call what happens next." After Walker left, Bill paced his small quarters, weighing options and implications. Deploying personally with the ABV would mean abandoning the development project at a critical juncture. Thompson would certainly use his absence to push for greater autonomy in the system, but it would also mean providing immediate protection for Bobby's unit during those vulnerable first weeks. The choice between project and family, between professional responsibility and personal love, seemed impossible. Yet as the night deepened, Bill found clarity emerging from the turmoil of competing priorities. By morning, his decision was made. Bill arrived at General Wallace's office as the sun rose over Aberdeen Proving Ground. The general was already at his desk, reviewing overnight reports from overseas deployments. "Captain Harmon, you're here early. General, I need to discuss an alternative deployment plan for the 1st ABV unit." Wallace leaned back in his chair, his expression cautious. "I'm listening." Bill laid out the accelerated preparation of a single ABV unit and the proposal for an experienced operator to deploy with the vehicle alongside the Ranger unit. He presented the concept professionally, focusing on operational advantages rather than personal motivations. "And who would this experienced operator be, Captain?" "Me, sir." Wallace studied Bill for a long moment. "You're proposing to return to active combat deployment at age 58, to personally operate an experimental vehicle in a combat zone, and coincidentally to deploy with your son's unit. Those are the facts, sir. I leave it to you to judge the appropriateness of the request." "Do you understand what you're asking? The regulations that would need to be waived? The precedent it would set?" "I do, Tim. I'm asking you to make an exception because it serves the mission. One functional ABV deploying early could save numerous lives and provide valuable field testing data." Wallace stood and walked to the window, looking out at the proving ground where generations of military equipment had been tested before facing the realities of combat. "Thompson will claim this proves his allegations, that your judgment is compromised by personal concerns. Let him. The operational benefits stand on their own merits." Wallace turned back to face Bill. "If I approve this, you understand you would be in a combat zone, not an advisory role, not a demonstration, actual combat operations." "That's precisely why it needs to be me, sir. I know this vehicle better than anyone. I know its capabilities and its limitations." The general returned to his desk and sat heavily. "I'll need to make some calls. No promises." Bill stood at attention. "Thank you for considering it, sir." "Dismissed, Captain. I'll let you know my decision by end of day." Bill left the general's office and headed directly to the vehicle bay, where his team was already working on the accelerated preparation of the 1st ABV unit. Walker looked up from an engine component, a question in his eyes. Bill nodded once, a silent confirmation that the request had been made. Now they waited. The day passed with agonizing slowness. Bill threw himself into the technical preparations, working alongside his team to ensure the ABV would be ready if approval came. Every system was checked and rechecked. Every component tested to its limits. Late that afternoon, Bill received a message to report to General Wallace immediately. He found the general in conference with several senior officers, including Lieutenant General Maxwell. Captain Harmon, Maxwell began, General Wallace has briefed us on your request. We've reviewed the operational implications and the regulatory challenges. Bill stood at attention, awaiting the decision that would determine not only his immediate future, but potentially the lives of many young soldiers, including his son. Your request is approved with conditions, Maxwell continued. You will deploy with the 1st ABV unit as its commander and primary operator. You will conduct field testing under combat conditions and provide daily reports on performance and required modifications. You will train additional operators in theater to ensure continuity of operations. Bill maintained his professional composure despite the surge of relief. Thank you, sir. What are the conditions? First, this deployment is temporary, 90 days maximum. Second, you will have no command authority beyond the ABV unit itself. Third, all standard combat deployment protocols apply regardless of your age or previous retirement status. Understood and accepted, sir. General Wallace handed Bill a folder containing orders and authorizations. The arrangements are being processed. You deploy with the Ranger unit in 7 days. Get that vehicle ready. It will be ready, sir. As Bill turned to leave, General Maxwell spoke again. One more thing, Captain. Colonel Thompson has been relieved of his duties on this project effective immediately. Evidence has emerged connecting him directly to both sabotage incidents. Bill stopped, surprised by this development. May I ask what evidence, sir? Lieutenant Carmichael came forward voluntarily, provided detailed testimony and documentation. Apparently, Thompson's zealotry about autonomous systems crossed a line that Carmichael couldn't accept. Bill absorbed this information with mixed emotions. Thompson's actions had been unethical and potentially criminal, but his fundamental belief in protecting soldiers by removing them from danger was not without merit. What happens to the autonomous detection systems integration? Development continues under Captain Chen's supervision. The merged approach remains the goal. We still need the best elements of both philosophies. After leaving the meeting, Bill found his team waiting anxiously in the vehicle bay. He briefed them on the deployment approval and Thompson's removal from the project. We have 7 days to make this vehicle combat ready, he concluded. After that, Chen will lead the continued development here while Walker and I deploy with the ABV to Afghanistan. Sir? Walker looked surprised. I'm deploying with you. If you're willing, Master Sergeant. I need someone who knows this machine inside and out. Someone who can maintain it under battlefield conditions. Walker grinned, revealing his gold tooth. Try and stop me, Captain. Been too long since I got my hands dirty in a real fight. The team worked around the clock for the next 7 days. The 1st ABV unit was prepared for deployment with singular focus and determination. Systems were hardened for the harsh conditions of Afghanistan. Spare parts were cataloged and packed. Technical documentation was finalized for the operators who would eventually take over. On the morning of deployment, Bill met Bobby at the airfield. Father and son stood in uniform, preparing to board separate aircraft bound for the same distant battlefield. I never wanted you to follow me into a war zone, Bill said quietly. I know, Dad, but this is where I need to be. Bill placed a hand on his son's shoulder. The ABV will be there 3 days after your unit arrives. Until then, you follow standard protocols. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. Bobby nodded. 3 days, we can manage that. After that, you'll have the best protection American engineering can provide. Around them, soldiers boarded transport aircraft, their faces young, but eyes already old with the knowledge of what awaited them. Bill felt the weight of responsibility for all of them, not just his son. The ABV wasn't just a machine or a project anymore. It was a promise to these young men and women, a promise of protection in one of the most dangerous environments on Earth. As they prepared to board their respective aircraft, Bobby surprised his father with a quick, fierce embrace. See you on the other side, Dad, we've got work to do. Bill watched his son board with his Ranger unit, then turned toward the massive cargo aircraft that would transport the ABV. Walker stood by the loading ramp, supervising as the massive vehicle was secured for the long flight. Ready for one last adventure, Master Sergeant? Walker nodded, his expression a mixture of anticipation and solemn understanding. One last mission to make a difference. Can't ask for more than that, Captain. The two old soldiers boarded the aircraft, returning to war not for glory or duty, but for love. Love of country, love of their fellow soldiers, and in Bill's case, the deepest love of all, the love of a father for his son. As the aircraft lifted off, Bill settled into his seat for the long journey to Afghanistan. The ABV project had begun as a technical challenge. It had evolved into a philosophical battle over the future of warfare. Now it had become something far more personal and immediate, a race to save lives in a distant land where ancient hatreds and modern explosives created a deadly equation. Bill closed his eyes, mentally preparing for what awaited. In 72 hours, they would be on the ground in Afghanistan. In 73 hours, the ABV would face its true test. Not on a controlled proving ground in New Mexico, but on the unforgiving battlefield where theory met reality and where mistakes cost lives. The true trial by fire was about to begin. Afghanistan greeted Captain William Harmon with a sky so clear and blue it seemed almost artificial. The mountains rose like ancient sentinels around Bagram Airfield, their peaks still snow-capped despite the summer heat that shimmered across the tarmac. Bill stepped off the transport plane, the familiar weight of body armor and gear, a memory reawakened after years behind desks and in testing facilities. Master Sergeant Walker emerged behind him, squinting against the harsh sunlight. Just like old times, eh, Captain? Except the joints creak a little more. Speak for yourself, Walker. I'm in my prime. The humor masked their shared awareness of reality. At 58 and 62, they were easily the oldest combat operators on the ground. Their presence here defied conventional military wisdom, regulations, and actuarial tables. But they brought something no younger soldier could offer: experience, perspective, an intimate knowledge of the steel beast that was being unloaded from the massive cargo plane behind them. The M1150 Assault Breacher Vehicle gleamed in the Afghan sun, its mine plow lowered like the horn of a mechanical rhinoceros. Soldiers gathered to watch as the massive vehicle was guided down the loading ramp. Most had never seen an ABV before, having only heard rumors of the new mine-clearing system that would change how they moved through the deadly Afghan terrain. Colonel James Westfield, commander of the forward operating base, approached with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism evident in his expression. Captain Harmon, when they told me they were sending a nearly retired tank commander with an experimental vehicle, I assumed someone in personnel was playing a joke. No joke, Colonel, just unorthodox deployment timing. Bill handed over his orders. The ABV is ready for immediate operational testing under combat conditions. Westfield reviewed the paperwork. Your authorization comes from very high up the chain, Captain. Must be nice to have friends with stars on their shoulders. The vehicle earned this priority, sir, not me. It's designed to save lives. Your Rangers have been taking casualties from IEDs at an unacceptable rate. The colonel's expression softened slightly. That they have. 3rd Platoon hit another one yesterday. 2 wounded, 1 critical. If your machine can reduce those numbers, I don't care if you're 100 years old. It can and will, sir. We just need 48 hours for final calibrations and systems check. Then we're operational. You have 24 hours, Captain. Intelligence reports indicate heavy Taliban movement in the eastern valleys. We're mounting a major patrol tomorrow at Oro 600. Bill concealed his concern at the accelerated timeline. We'll be ready, Colonel. After Westfield departed, Walker moved closer. 24 hours? The environmental calibrations alone take 12. Then we work through the night. Where's my son's unit stationed? Rangers are billeted in the eastern compound. They're scheduled for the point position on tomorrow's patrol. Bill's jaw tightened. Point position meant Bobby's unit would be the first to encounter any mines or IEDs. The very situation the ABV was designed to prevent. Get the vehicle to the maintenance bay. I want full diagnostics running within the hour. A young lieutenant approached as Walker departed. Captain Harmon, Lieutenant Jessica Cooper, communications officer. I've been assigned as your liaison. She handed Bill a secure tablet. These just came in from Aberdeen. Updated software patches for the ABV targeting systems. Bill examined the technical specifications. These are from Captain Chen? Yes, sir. Transmitted 4 hours ago with highest priority. The message says they're critical updates to the autonomous detection algorithms. Bill nodded. Chen was still working to improve the system, even with Thompson removed from the project. The integration of autonomous elements continued despite the accelerated deployment. Bill transferred the updates to his secure drive and headed toward the communications center to check for any additional messages from the development team. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of activity. The ABV underwent rigorous testing and calibration. The software updates were installed and verified. Mechanical systems were adjusted for the elevation and temperature conditions of eastern Afghanistan. Throughout the process, Bill sent detailed reports back to the development team at Aberdeen, maintaining the crucial feedback loop between field operations and continued refinement. Bill managed only 3 hours of sleep before the mission briefing at 0500. The operations room was filled with platoon leaders and specialists, the air heavy with the particular tension that precedes combat operations. Colonel Westfield stood before a large map of the target area, indicating key terrain features and known threat zones. Intelligence indicates Taliban forces have established a staging area in the Eastern Valley, approximately 15 kilometers from our position. We believe they're using this location to prepare explosive devices for deployment throughout the region. Satellite imagery showed a small village nestled among rocky hills. Roads leading to the village were narrow and winding, ideal for concealing IEDs and ambush positions. 1st and 2nd platoon will approach from the north. 3rd platoon will secure the high ground to the east. 4th platoon remains in reserve. Westfield turned to Bill. Captain Harmon and his ABV will precede 1st platoon, clearing the main approach road of potential explosive devices. The platoon leaders studied the ABV schematics displayed on a secondary screen. Lieutenant James Carter, commanding 1st platoon, raised a question. Platoon raised a poem. Sir, what's the operational procedure for following the ABV? What distance should we maintain? Standard protocol is 100 meters during active clearing operations, Bill explained. Once a section is cleared and marked with lane indicators, vehicles can proceed at normal tactical spacing. And if the ABV encounters resistance beyond its capabilities? That won't happen, Lieutenant. Bill projected confidence he couldn't entirely feel. The ABV was still experimental, despite all the testing and refinement. This would be its first true combat deployment. After the briefing, Bill sought out Bobby. He found his son checking equipment with his squad, his Ranger tab prominent on his uniform. The soldiers around him were so young, too young for the responsibilities they carried. Sergeant Harmon, a word. Bobby followed his father to a quiet corner of the preparation area. Despite the professional formality they maintained in public, the concern in Bill's eyes was unmistakably paternal. Your platoon will be following directly behind the ABV. I need you to maintain proper distance during clearing operations. No heroics, no shortcuts. Standard protocol, Captain. We've been briefed. Bill lowered his voice. The software was updated last night. There might be calibration issues we haven't had time to fully test. Bobby nodded his understanding. I'll keep my squad alert for any operational anomalies. The professional exchange couldn't mask the underlying reality. A father was about to drive a massive armored vehicle into one of the most densely mined areas in Afghanistan. His son would follow behind, trusting his life to his father's creation and skill. How are you feeling? Bill asked, momentarily setting aside rank and protocol. Good days and bad days, Bobby replied simply. Today's a good day. Before they could continue, the command to mount up echoed across the staging area. The time for preparation and conversation was over. The mission was beginning. Bill and Walker climbed aboard the ABV, settling into the familiar confines of the command and control positions. The interior resembled an Abrams tank, but with significant modifications to accommodate the specialized mine-clearing systems. All systems operational, Walker reported after completing the startup sequence. Environmental calibrations holding steady. Remote sensors aligned and active. Bill activated the communication system. ABV to command, ready to proceed. Command to ABV, you are cleared as lead element. 1st platoon will follow at designated distance. Proceed to phase line alpha and await further instructions. The massive vehicle rumbled forward, leaving the relative safety of the forward operating base for the unpredictable dangers of Afghan terrain. The morning sun cast long shadows across the landscape, creating a deceptive beauty that masked deadly intent. Bill operated with the focused precision that had characterized his entire military career. Each movement of the controls was deliberate and measured. Each scan of the terrain methodical and thorough. The ABV's mine plow was lowered to operational height, ready to trigger and deflect any explosive devices hidden beneath the dusty road. 1st potential threat zone approaching, Walker announced. monitoring the ground-penetrating radar and autonomous detection systems. Sensors indicating metallic anomalies at 2 o'clock, approximately 20 meters ahead. Bill adjusted course slightly, positioning the mine plow for optimal engagement. Activating marking system. Alert first platoon to maintain distance. The ABV moved steadily forward. The mine plow struck something solid, followed immediately by a muffled explosion that rattled the armored vehicle but caused no damage. Sand and debris scattered across the armored viewports. Soviet-era anti-tank mine, Walker confirmed after analyzing the detonation signature. Marking cleared path. The ABV automatically deployed marker poles along the edges of the cleared route, creating a visible safe lane for the vehicles and troops following behind. The system worked exactly as designed, transforming deadly terrain into a secure pathway. Over the next hour, the ABV cleared 3 more explosive devices, each one potentially lethal to conventional vehicles or dismounted troops. Bill maintained constant communication with the following forces, ensuring they understood exactly which areas were safe for movement. The convoy approached a narrow section of road, bordered by steep embankments on both sides, a perfect ambush location. Bill's decades of combat experience triggered warning signals in his mind. "This doesn't feel right," he murmured, scanning the terrain more intensely. "Too obvious a choke point to leave lightly defended," Walker agreed, running deep scan with enhanced sensors. The autonomous detection system, improved by Chen's latest algorithms, highlighted an anomaly buried deeper than standard mines, directly in the center of the road ahead. "Command, this is ABV. We have a potential deep-buried IED at Phase Line Bravo, requesting permission to deploy line charge." "ABV, this is Command. Permission granted. First platoon, hold position." Bill activated the line charge deployment system, a rocket launched from the ABV carrying a cord of explosives that extended nearly 100 meters ahead. Once in position, Bill triggered the detonation. The controlled explosion rippled along the road, triggering a massive secondary blast that sent debris soaring 50 meters into the air. The deep-buried device had been powerful enough to destroy any vehicle in the convoy, potentially including the ABV itself. "Jesus," Walker breathed. "That would have taken out half the convoy." "Command, this is ABV. Deep-buried IED neutralized. Substantial crater in the roadway. Recommend alternate route for non-tracked vehicles." As Bill maneuvered the ABV around the resulting crater, marking a safe bypass for the following forces, the communications system crackled with urgent messages. "All units, be advised. Taliban forces observed moving on ridge line to the east. Possible ambush in progress." Bill scanned the ridge line through armored viewports. Sure enough, dark figures moved among the rocks, taking positions that would provide firing angles on the convoy below. "Command, this is ABV. Request permission to engage hostile forces on Eastern Ridge." "ABV, this is Command. Negative. Continue with mine-clearing operations. Third platoon is moving to engage hostiles." Bill watched as Ranger teams deployed from the convoy, moving with practiced efficiency toward the higher ground. Among them was Bobby's squad, recognizable by their distinctive movement pattern, a result of the specialized training Bobby had implemented. "Walker, take control of mine-clearing operations. Continue forward at reduced speed." "What are you doing, Captain?" Bill moved to the remote weapons station, a 50 caliber machine gun mounted on the ABV's upper structure. Providing covering fire, those Rangers are exposed during their approach. Bill activated the weapon system, using the optical targeting interface to identify Taliban positions among the rocks. With precise bursts, he began suppressing the enemy forces, forcing them to seek cover rather than fire on the advancing Rangers. The firefight intensified as more Taliban fighters emerged from concealed positions. What had appeared to be a small observation team was revealing itself as a substantial force with prepared defensive positions. "Command, this is ABV. Enemy forces larger than reported. Request immediate air support." "ABV, this is Command. Air support is inbound. ETA 12 minutes. Continue suppressing fire to support 3rd Platoon advancement." Bill maintained disciplined fire control, conserving ammunition while maximizing effectiveness. The ABV wasn't designed primarily as a combat vehicle, but its weapon systems were proving valuable in this unexpected engagement. Through the targeting optics, Bill could see Bobby leading his squad up a rocky approach toward the enemy positions. They moved with the coordinated precision of experienced Rangers, utilizing cover and providing mutual support. Despite his concern as a father, Bill felt pride in his son's evident skill and leadership. Suddenly, multiple explosions erupted along the Rangers' path. The Taliban had mined the approach routes, anticipating a counterattack from ground forces. Two Rangers were thrown violently by the blasts, their conditions impossible to determine from Bill's position. "Command, the eastern approach is mined. 3rd Platoon is taking casualties." Walker's voice cut through the chaos. "Captain, we have a problem. The autonomous detection system is registering multiple subsurface anomalies directly ahead. The entire road appears to be seeded with IEDs." Bill faced an impossible choice: continue the mine-clearing operation to protect the main convoy, or divert the ABV to help the Rangers now trapped between minefields and enemy fire. The ABV couldn't be in two places at once. "Walker, transfer control of the weapon station to your position. Continue suppressing fire to support 3rd Platoon." "What are you planning, Captain?" Bill moved back to the primary controls. "I'm taking the ABV off-road. We're going to clear a path to those stranded Rangers." "Sir, with respect, the ABV isn't designed for that terrain. The slope exceeds our operational parameters." "The parameters were established in testing, Sergeant. This is combat. Different rules apply." Bill turned the massive vehicle toward the eastern slope, aiming for the gentlest approach he could identify. The ABV groaned under the strain as it began climbing terrain it was never designed to navigate. Warning indicators flashed across control panels. Mechanical stress gauges moved into red zones. "Hull integrity at 70%, Walker reported. "Suspension systems approaching failure thresholds. Keep suppressing the enemy positions. I need 3 more minutes to reach the Rangers' position." The ABV continued its agonizing climb. Metal screamed in protest. Track systems slipped on loose rock before regaining traction. Bill pushed the machine beyond its design limitations, demanding performance that engineering calculations had deemed impossible. Finally, the ABV reached a position between the trapped Rangers and the Taliban fighters. Its bulk provided critical cover for the wounded and pinned down American forces. "Sergeant Harmon," Bill called through the external communication system, "move your wounded behind the ABV. We'll deploy smoke to cover your withdrawal." Bobby's voice came through clearly despite the ongoing gunfire. "2 wounded, 1 critical. We need immediate extraction." Bringing the ABV closer to your position, prepare to load the wounded into the rear access hatch. Bill maneuvered the massive vehicle into an optimal position, using its bulk to shield the Rangers from enemy fire. The rear access hatch, normally used for equipment maintenance, would serve as an improvised medical evacuation point. "Walker, deploy smoke screen and continue suppression fire." Smoke canisters launched from the ABV, quickly obscuring the area in thick, white clouds. Under this cover, Rangers moved their wounded toward the vehicle. Bill watched through thermal imaging as Bobby directed the evacuation, remaining exposed longer than necessary to ensure his men reached safety. "All wounded secure," Bobby reported after the injured Rangers were loaded into the ABV's maintenance compartment. "Remaining squad members will provide security while you extract." "Negative, Sergeant. All Rangers board immediately. We're clearing a path back to the main convoy." "Sir, we still have a mission to complete. The mission parameters have changed. Board, now, that's an order." Through the viewport, Bill could see Bobby's hesitation. The Ranger in him wanted to continue the fight. The soldier in him recognized the tactical wisdom of withdrawal. Finally, Bobby signaled his remaining squad members to board the ABV through access hatches and external handholds designed for maintenance crews. With all Rangers secured, Bill began the precarious descent toward the main convoy. The ABV's weight worked against it now, gravity pulling the massive vehicle down the slope faster than was safe. Bill fought for control, using every technique learned through decades of armored vehicle operation. "Hydraulic systems failing," Walker reported, his voice tense but controlled. "Mine plow stabilizers offline. Autonomous detection systems compromised. Switch to manual controls. We'll clear the path visually." The ABV reached level ground with a bone-jarring impact that would have thrown less experienced operators from their stations. Bill immediately reoriented toward the main convoy, which had established a defensive perimeter during the unexpected engagement. "Command, this is ABV. We have extracted 3rd Platoon wounded and personnel, returning to convoy position. Request immediate medical support upon arrival." "Copy ABV, medical team standing by. Be advised, air support has arrived and is engaging enemy positions." The sound of helicopter gunships filled the air as Apache attack helicopters began systematic strikes against the Taliban positions. Under this covering fire, Bill guided the damaged ABV back to the convoy's location. Medical teams rushed forward as the ABV halted within the perimeter. The wounded Rangers were quickly transferred to proper medical vehicles. Bobby and his remaining squad members dismounted, their expressions a mixture of relief and residual combat tension. Colonel Westfield approached as Bill emerged from the ABV's command hatch. "That was not the approved operational use of this vehicle, Captain." "No, sir, it wasn't." Bill surveyed the damaged ABV, noting the bent mine plow, damaged track assemblies, and scorched armor plating. "But it was the necessary one." Westfield's stern expression softened slightly. "The necessary one, yes. Those Rangers would likely all be casualties without your intervention." He turned to the gathering officers. "Mission parameters have changed. We're returning to base for reassessment and to evaluate the intelligence failure that led us into this ambush." The convoy reorganized for the return journey, with the damaged ABV taking a protected position within the formation rather than leading. Bill worked with Walker to implement emergency repairs, restoring minimal mine-clearing capability for the return trip. Bobby approached as they worked, his Ranger gear dusty and battle-worn. "Thank you, Captain. My men wouldn't have made it out otherwise." "Just doing my job, Sergeant. How are your wounded?" "Peterson will lose his leg. Martinez has the shrapnel wounds but should recover fully." Bobby hesitated, then added more quietly, "The ABV performed beyond specifications. The autonomous detection systems identified mines that we would never have spotted visually." Bill nodded, recognizing his son's professional assessment of the technology that had saved his men. "The integration of Thompson's detection algorithms with our clearing capabilities worked better than expected under combat conditions. I'll include that in my report." They maintained their professional demeanor despite the emotions both felt. They had just faced death together, father and son, captain and sergeant, each fulfilling their duty while carrying the additional weight of family bonds. The convoy returned to base without further incident, a testament to the ABV's effectiveness even in its damaged state. Upon arrival, Bill immediately began comprehensive documentation of the vehicle's performance, sending detailed reports to the development team at Aberdeen. Every success and failure would inform improvements to the next generation of ABVs already in production. 3 days later, after emergency repairs had restored the ABV to operational status, Bill received unexpected visitors. General Wallace and Captain Chen arrived on a military transport, their presence indicating the significance attached to the ABV's first combat deployment. "The Pentagon is very interested in your field performance data," General Wallace explained as they examined the battle-damaged vehicle, "particularly the integration of autonomous detection with human operation under combat conditions." Chen inspected the modified systems with professional curiosity. "The adaptations you made in the field are fascinating, Captain, particularly the recalibration of the sensor arrays for the local soil conditions." Bill led them through a detailed briefing, highlighting both successes and failures. The autonomous detection systems performed exceptionally well, identifying deeply buried explosives that conventional methods would have missed. However, the remote operation capabilities were compromised by the terrain. Human operation proved essential when conditions exceeded program parameters. "That's precisely the data we needed," Wallace nodded. "The integrated approach is proving superior to either fully manned or fully autonomous systems alone." "And Colonel Thompson?" Bill asked. "Has he accepted these findings?" Wallace and Chen exchanged glances. "Thompson has been reassigned to a research position at the Pentagon," the general replied. "His expertise is valuable, but his methods were deemed incompatible with project requirements." After the official briefing, Wallace spoke with Bill privately. "There's something else you should know. The medical battalion conducted additional tests on Sergeant Harmon after treating the wounded Rangers. His condition is progressing faster than initially diagnosed. The combat stress likely accelerated the symptoms." Bill absorbed this news with outward calm that masked inner turmoil. "What's the prognosis?" 6 months of active duty capability, perhaps less. They're recommending immediate medical discharge and treatment at Walter Reed." "Does he know?" "Yes. He's requested to complete his current deployment before beginning treatment." Bill wasn't surprised. Bobby would want to stay with his men to fulfill his duty despite personal cost. The same stubborn commitment that had characterized Bill's own career. "I'll talk with him, not as his commanding officer, but as his father." Bill found Bobby at the memorial service for Private Peterson, who had succumbed to his injuries despite the medical team's best efforts. The Rangers stood in solemn formation, honoring their fallen brother with the quiet dignity that characterized their elite unit. After the service, father and son walked together along the perimeter of the base, the mountains of Afghanistan providing a majestic backdrop to their conversation. "General Wallace told me about your latest medical results," Bill began. Bobby nodded, unsurprised. I figured he would. I'm still combat effective, Dad. I can complete this deployment. No one questions your capability or your courage, Bobby. But there are treatments at Walter Reed that could slow the progression, maybe even reverse some symptoms. At what cost? Months in a hospital while my unit continues without me? Bobby stopped walking, turning to face his father directly. You've spent your entire career making machines that protect soldiers. Let me be one of those soldiers while I still can. Bill recognized the impossible choice before him. As an officer, he should insist on the medical discharge, on prioritizing treatment over continued service. As a father, he wanted nothing more than to ensure his son received every possible chance for recovery. But as a man who had lived by the warrior's code his entire life, he understood Bobby's decision in his bones. One condition, Bill said finally, you transfer to the ABV operational team for the remainder of your deployment. If you're going to stay in combat, you'll do it with the best protection available. Bobby considered this compromise. The Rangers need every experienced squad leader they have. And the ABV program needs operators who understand infantry needs and have combat experience with the system. This isn't special treatment, Bobby. It's appropriate assignment based on qualification and experience. After a long moment, Bobby nodded his acceptance. 60 more days, then I'll accept the medical discharge and whatever treatment they recommend. The following weeks saw the ABV become a central element in operations throughout the region. With Bobby and selected Rangers trained as operators, the vehicle established an impressive record of detecting and clearing explosive threats. Casualties from IEDs dropped dramatically in areas where the ABV operated. Bill documented every operation meticulously, providing the development team at Aberdeen with invaluable field data. Chen incorporated these lessons into the next generation of vehicles already being prepared for deployment. The integrated approach vindicated both Bill's insistence on human operators and Thompson's vision of advanced detection systems. As the end of Bill's 90-day deployment approached, General Wallace returned to Afghanistan to evaluate the ABV's overall performance. The President has taken personal interest in this program, Wallace explained during their meeting. Congress has approved funding for 50 additional units based on your field results. This vehicle is saving lives, Bill, exactly as you intended. The credit belongs to the entire development team, Bill insisted, and to the operators who've pushed its capabilities beyond our initial designs. Speaking of operators, Sergeant Harmon's transfer to Walter Reed has been arranged. He'll depart next week on a medical transport. Bill nodded, a mixture of relief and concern in his expression. His condition? Stable for now. The doctors are optimistic about experimental treatments available at Walter Reed. Wallace hesitated before continuing. There's something else. The Pentagon is establishing a permanent ABV development and training facility at Aberdeen. They need a commanding officer with both engineering knowledge and combat experience. Someone who understands both the technical and human elements. Bill understood the implication immediately. My deployment ends in 6 days, General. I was planning to return to retirement. Plans change, Captain, or should I say Colonel? The promotion paperwork is already processed. The offer represented everything Bill had worked toward throughout his career. Leadership of a program that would save countless lives, continued involvement with the technology he had helped create, and proximity to Walter Reed, where Bobby would undergo treatment. I'll need to discuss this with my wife, Bill said. She's been waiting for my retirement for a very long time. Of course, but I think Margaret will understand. She always has. 1 week later, Bill stood on the tarmac at Bagram Airfield as Bobby was carefully loaded onto the medical transport that would carry him back to the United States. Father and son had said their private goodbyes earlier. Now they maintained military protocol, a captain and a sergeant completing their respective deployments. The ABV units are in good hands, Bobby assured him. The operators you've trained understand the systems and the mission. I know they do. You've made sure of that. Bobby glanced at the 2 ABV vehicles parked nearby, their massive forms representing the culmination of years of development and sacrifice. It was worth it, wasn't it? Everything we went through to get these vehicles deployed? Worth every moment, Bill confirmed. These machines will protect American soldiers for decades to come. Your Rangers, their Rangers, a legacy of protection that will outlast both of us. As the medical staff signaled it was time to board, Bobby offered a formal salute. Permission to depart, Colonel? Bill returned the salute, pride overwhelming the concern in his eyes. Permission granted, Sergeant. I'll see you stateside in 3 weeks. After the transport departed, Bill walked to the nearest ABV. Walker was supervising maintenance procedures. his hands as grease-stained as they had been decades ago in the deserts of Kuwait. "Ready for one last patrol, Master Sergeant? Before we head home?" Walker grinned, revealing his gold tooth. "Lead the way, Colonel. One last mission for the old guard." The two veterans climbed aboard the massive vehicle that represented both the culmination of their careers and the bridge to a new generation of warfare. A machine designed to protect human lives by combining the best of technology and human judgment. A steel guardian born from the vision of men who understood that in war, as in life, the human element remained irreplaceable. 3 years later, Colonel William Harmon stood before the unveiled monument at the Pentagon Memorial Garden. The bronze statue depicted an M1150 Assault Breacher Vehicle in combat stance, its mine plow lowered and ready to protect those who followed. The plaque bore both his name and, to his surprise, Colonel Frank Thompson's. Bobby stood beside his father, leaning slightly on a cane but otherwise showing remarkable recovery from the experimental treatments at Walter Reed. His condition was managed rather than cured, but the prognosis had improved significantly. He would never return to combat, but he had found a new purpose teaching tactics at the Ranger Training Facility. "Thompson's name belongs there too," Bill acknowledged, studying the plaque. His vision of autonomous systems saving lives was valid, even if his methods were flawed. "The integrated approach proved better than either concept alone," Bobby agreed. "Human judgment enhanced by technology rather than replaced by it." Bill gazed at the monument that represented decades of effort and sacrifice. The ABV program had expanded beyond his initial vision, with hundreds of vehicles now deployed worldwide, clearing minefields not only for military operations, but for humanitarian missions as well. "Not a bad legacy for an old tank commander who refused to retire," Bobby said with a smile. "The legacy belongs to all of us," Bill replied. "The engineers, the operators, the young men and women who trust these machines with their lives." He placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "And to those who taught us why the work mattered." As they turned to leave, Bill noticed a group of young officer candidates touring the memorial garden. Their faces reflected the timeless mixture of ambition, uncertainty, and determination that had characterized every generation of military leaders. "Colonel Harmon," one of the candidates approached respectfully, "would you mind telling us about the AV program, how it began?" Bill exchanged glances with his son, then nodded. "It began with a simple idea: that technology should serve humanity, not replace it. That the greatest machines are those that protect human life and potential." As Bill began sharing the story with these future leaders, the bronze ABV stood in silent testimony to a fundamental truth he had spent his life defending: that in the evolution of warfare, as in all human endeavors, the critical element remained the human heart, mind, and spirit. Technology would advance, tactics would evolve, but the courage, judgment, and compassion of individuals would always determine the outcome. The Steel Guardian had fulfilled its purpose, clearing the way for those who followed, just as Bill had cleared the path for a new generation to carry forward the never-ending mission of protecting those who serve. The end.